Okay, well, first of all, I just want to say thanks a lot for coming on. I really appreciate it. You were in the Air Force for 20 years, retired as a master sergeant. You were in from 63 to 88. You were in Vietnam. You were going to go for a second time, but then the war had ended, so you didn't have to go for that second time,
That's
which I thought was
correct.
I thought that was interesting, and we'll get to it. But it was interesting how you did your time. You did a full tour, then you came home, got out, and then you got back in the military, and they were ready to send you again. I mean, and that must have been. We could wait till we get to that part to talk about it. But I thought that was fascinating that you were
Okay.
ready to go again. You started off as a 304. You were one of those guys who was at the very beginning of the career field. You went from 304 to 275. You were the pack rat, ROMAD, TACP member in Vietnam. So yeah, I can't wait to hear this story. It's fascinating. I'm going to turn it over to you. You go ahead and tell us your story, and I will sit back and listen.
Okay, JD, thanks for the introduction. Let me show people my bona fides before I get started here. This is a hat from Vietnam. The Black Beret, excuse me, from the 275 XO early days. This is almost 50 years old, this beret. This is original. And also, this is my go to hell hat from Vietnam. This is 60 years old. And this is what I wore for my duty hat was in country in Vietnam.
Wow.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, JD, for the invitation to appear on this edition of Just Not War Stories. I'd like to welcome the veterans, active duty service members, and civilians that have tuned into this episode. Before I continue, I'd like to take a moment to remember those special veterans who gave their life in pursuit of freedom wherever and whenever they were ordered to do so. Also, please take a moment to give a belated welcome home to the living veterans that answered the nation's call to serve in Vietnam and elsewhere, but never received the welcome home celebration they deserve. Welcome home, brothers and sisters in arms. Who am I? In addition to being a U.S. Air Force retiree, I'm a seventh generation American, a direct descendant from an American Revolutionary War soldier, Henry Elias Sr. He was a private in the Pennsylvania militia. He was a first generation American and patriot, present for duty at the Siege of Yorktown in October of 1781. He was also present for the surrender of British Army General Lord Cornwallis on October 19, 1781. That date is recognized as the end of the war with Great Britain. At that time, members of my family have answered the nation's call to arms either through a draft or as a volunteer. I was a volunteer for that call. So my civilian military journey begins in 1963 in 6 parts, covering different time frames of that journey from 1963 through 1988. So like they said back in the 60s, turn on, tune in, drop out, and peace. And don't get too high. Okay, 1963 to 1965. There's really not a lot here. Life after high school and a draft notice to serve in the U.S. military. Summer 1963, I worked in the open pit coal mines of central Pennsylvania. That's not a life for me. So I chose to go to some trade school to learn TV and radio repair. Graduated from that and was drafted 2 weeks later in March 1965. I arrived at my induction center, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and joined the United States Air Force. I did not want any part of the other services. An easy choice, as the Air Force accepted me in one of the electronic career fields, as yet undetermined. I could see missiles, satellite, communications, or computers. My recruiter promised me the world. Bullshit. Okay. So this is the really nice part, folks. I hope you pay attention. Take a break if you want, whenever, have a glass of water, whatever. I'm going to get right into this. 1965 Air Force Basic Training School. In Vietnam, I went to basic training at Lackland Air Force Base in the spring of 1965. Normal Air Force basic training. I would learn military discipline, weapons quals, PT, the UCMJ, and learn how to stay out of trouble and graduate from basic training. After basic training, I was given an assignment to the ground radio career field maintenance school at Keesler Air Force Base, Biloxi, Mississippi. Graduating, I received orders to the 764th Radar Squadron, an Air Defense Command Radar Squadron in St. Albans, Vermont. I'd be assigned as a ground radio maintenance repairman, Air Force Specialty Code 304X4, working in the ground-to-air transmitter receiver site. After 1.5 years there, I felt it was time to move on, so I volunteered for an overseas assignment, and within a couple of weeks I had orders to Vietnam. In those days, this is pre-1968, so most people, Vietnam, I had no clue, and so did most of the young airmen I was stationed with. War? What war? We were too busy partying to pay attention to any news at that time. It was all peace, love, and dope in the States, too. No one was paying attention to the Vietnam thing. Okay, my orders specified report for duty not later than 17 December 1967. Special Operations Group PACAF, the Trang Air Base, Vietnam, with a TDY en route at Lackland Air Force Base. Missing Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's was going to be a bummer that year. It was. I missed them all. TDY is over. Next stop, Vietnam. Vietnam, I liken it to a Greek tragedy for the Vietnam veteran. On your flight to Vietnam, you were given a pamphlet to read that told you all about the struggles the South Vietnamese civilians were facing. The communists attempted overthrowing their elected government and the measures being taken by the U.S. government to stop that from happening. I think, in fact, they were trying to stop the Chinese from taking over that part of the world, but I wasn't in tune with any kind of political thing at that time. This pamphlet described in detail the military structure of the North Vietnamese Army, NVA, Viet Minh, and the Viet Cong. Their mission, the dangers facing that enemy, booby traps, sapper attacks, all that terrible war stuff. I was not sure how this related to radio maintenance, but I would soon find out. Man, I'm glad I'm going to a radio shop. So I arrived at Cameron Bay on the 17th of December, 1967, wearing the old horse blanket. I don't know how many remember that jacket. Do you remember that, JD?
I don't.
Okay, we're talking some heavy-duty outerwear. Okay, and then we also had winter blues in those days. They were a heavier-duty wool uniform compared to a summer version. Ground temperature when I arrived was about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Deboard the plane, was like a 707 type aircraft, right on the runway. There's no ramp, that drives up and lets you off the plane like that at a terminal somewhere. Just a little Jeep that pulls up with a stair up to the aircraft, and everybody gets out and just stands there. Most of the people were like Navy, Army, Marines, and a couple of Air Force guys. There was almost no Air Force guys on this plane. So a lot of Army, Navy, and Marine Corps troops, then off they went to replenishment platoons or wherever. And I learned bus shows up, they pick them all up, and the 3 Air Force guys were standing on the ramp by ourselves. I learned that day the Air Force assumes you can take care of yourself and get from point A to Z on your own. So what a effing wake-up call. So standing on the ramp, one of the sergeants, probably an Air Force mechanic, or because he seemed like he knew what he was doing, he hails one of the maintenance vans on the flight line, and they drop us off at the passenger terminal. That's the place on base where you would go for transportation 20 places in South Vietnam by aircraft. Now I have to figure out how to get to Nha Trang. Tell you the truth, I was in shock at this point.
Right.
I mean, it's an actual combat zone. It's live, everything right then and there. I'm like, wow, what? Okay, Cam Ranh Bay, the military support facility, is about 150 square miles in size. It was the main supply and support base for the 2 Corps military combat operation area. It had every U.S. and Allied military department represented as permanent party TDY or visiting in some capacity. During the Vietnam War, it was the single largest military installation in the world. It had over tens of thousands of military personnel stationed there. For one reason or another, the aircraft operating out of Cam Ranh Bay covered the whole spectrum of military tactical aircraft, from single prop to the latest fast movers, the F-4s. This base was so big, 160 square miles, not a place for rookies to wander off to see what's on the compound. So you're not going to the BX or anything by just walking there. Arrival to Nha Trang Air Base. Having spent several days sleeping on my duffel bag in the Cam Ranh Bay passenger terminal with my name on a standby list to get on a flight to Nha Trang, a distance of about 20 miles. Maybe I should have walked. Anyhow, I finally get called to a flight on a C-123 to my base and check into the 14th Special Operations Combat Support Group at Nha Trang Air Base. Nha Trang Air Base, man, this place looks scary as hell. All kind of airplanes painted black or camouflage. I never imagined the Air Force had this stuff. Okay, the rest of this story unfolds exactly as it happened for me to become a ROMAD and TACP team member. This is exactly as how the Air Force pathfinders and plank holders shot the arrow that followed a path that became the creation of the TACP career field of the modern era. That arrow remains in flight to this day. Okay, you might have heard this saying before. There I was at 20,000 feet. The 14th Special Operations Combat Support Group and the 21st TASC. I'll pause for a minute and ask JD if you have any questions at this point.
No, I just think it's awesome how the point that you said that the Marines, the Army, and the Navy all had guys there to pick them up, but for Air Force guys, they were like, "Yeah, you'll make it. Just good luck to you."
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
I was in shock. I really was. I can tell you that. And how I remember this. This is like 60 years ago. The only way I remember this so clearly is I took photographs of my whole entire tour. Mm-hmm. So at any point when I look at those photographs, I can pretty much picture where it was from and the time period that happened.
Sure.
Had I not done that, I'd have never put this back together.
Yeah.
Okay, 14th Special Operations Combat Support Group and the 21st TASC. First off, why did the Air Force choose E4 304 X4's ground radio maintenance personnel to become the primary AFC to man the field level TACPs during the Vietnam War? The reason was this. The very first TACPs in Vietnam, 1965-68, were manned with Airman Second Class or E4 radio operators. The U.S. Air Force, PACAF, and the 14th Special Operations Group, the Air Commandos in particular, determined the radio operators did not have the skills needed to operate and maintain the Mark 108 radio communication set and they needed replaced ASAP with an AFSC that did have those skills. The Air Force solution was simple. Pay attention here. This is familiar later on down the road. The Air Force solution was simple, but not well thought out or planned. Just used existing assets. Anybody remember the 275XO conversion? Okay, ground radio 304X4, having proven experience and the necessary skills to operate and maintain mobile comm systems already, including the Mark 108 FACT comm system. The Air Force determined the least expensive and need for a very expedited mission to complete. The radio operator swap out was just use the E4 AFSC 304X4's ground radio repairman to replace TACP radio operators in Vietnam. This program was termed Project PACRAT, with the name given to the radio operator maintenance replacement program. So this name PACRAT also was the name of a ROMAD in Vietnam. The term ROMAD did not exist in the Vietnam War. Most 304X4s are simply called radio operators.
Okay.
So with no pipeline training in combat arms and survival skills, the Air Force diverted all 304X4s in the grade of E4, E5, sergeant staffs. E4s back in those days had just been made sergeants, by the way. That happened in October of 1967. That had assignments to tactical air support units as a choice to fill the radio operator positions. This was done in 3 groups, 1966 through 1968. I just went over the name given to ID, the TACP members in Vietnam. They were called pack rats, and that's the name we used. We met other ROMADs or whatever. Now, ROMAD's the most common name familiar with the TACP enlisted members in Vietnam. So from here on out, I'm going to use the term ROMAD to refer to our 304X4 operators. Okay. Now, how we were chosen for TACP duty in Vietnam was simply the luck of the draw. This is how. If you were a ground radio maintenance repairman, E4 sergeant, and volunteered for a worldwide assignment, you would have greater than 50% chance of being picked off by PACAF and further assigned to an air division, a tactical air support group, a special operations support group at some unidentifiable base on your orders. The support group would then assign you to whatever opening was available on the base for a radio maintenance 304X4 person. You could have a chance of going to somebody's radio shop, like a comm squadron or something like that. So the support group would fill slots that they needed filled. Lucky me, I was assigned to the 21st Task Radio Maintenance Shop on the Trang Air Base. What was the 21st Task? It was part of a larger 504 Tactical Air Support Operations Group that was responsible for providing combat air crews, forward air control pilots, aircraft, and TACPs to aid the U.S. Army and allied combat maneuver units and special operations units of all kinds, tasked to suppress or complete elimination of an enemy threats or hostile actions against American, South Vietnamese, allied forces, and most importantly, protecting the general civilian population from harassment and direct attacks against them. Day 1 of my arrival at the 21st Task was in processing, initial assignment, and a trip to the Airmen's Club, where I proceeded to get. Okay, day 2 in Vietnam. My arrival for duty at the 21st Task Radio Maintenance Shop. What a disappointment. It was Christmas Day or very close to that. No one cares if you're late reporting for duty. And surprise, you're not going to fix radios ever again. You're going to be a radio operator, assigned to a tactical air control party of your choice somewhere in the hill called the Central Highlands. Senior NCOs in the task radio shop had the responsibility of keeping you in the shop or sending you to hell in some godforsaken place up country. Up country means 100 miles or more away from your home base.
Okay.
You're going to be on your own. Since all the radio maintenance jobs were performed by master sergeants and chief master sergeants, there's no like senior airmen or anybody working in those shops. No junior NCOs were going to work there. You were given the option to volunteer for a particular unit assignment, such as the Green Beanies, the Korean Tiger Division, the Aussies, or any of the Army units in the 2 Corps military operation area. Now, 2 Corps is famous. That's the Corps that had the Battle of Ia Drang, the first major contact and combat operation against the real NVA force. There's a movie on that. We Were Soldiers.
Oh, okay.
That happened in the 2 Corps area. Was pretty much the hottest, heaviest fighting of the whole area. There's 4 corps in Vietnam. This particular corps took most of the battle action was in this area.
Oh, okay.
You could go to any Army units in the 2 Corps area. I chose the Republic of Korea because a bunch of drunk romance short-timers told me to. What the F did I know? I still thought I'd be maintaining radios. Advice from short-timers was volunteer. So I did. I tell you straight up that most, if not all, Sergeant E4 304X4s didn't know jack squat about the unit they picked or anything about the Tactical Air Force. Furthermore, most importantly here, not one E4 was trained in combat arms or given any survival training whatsoever to prepare them for these hazardous and most dangerous assignments. Their future might as well adapt or die. 100%. OJT in live combat action against enemy force from day one when you arrived at your unit. TACP brigade, regiment, and on down. Okay, day 3 in Vietnam, still in the Trang. Outfitting for assignment to the Republic of Korea Tiger Division. I needed a lot for this. My second day on the Trang, I spent most of my time at the beach or going to the club on base. The short timers at the Airmen's Club would tell you all kinds of war stories, and nothing was good in pretty much all of that. So I figured if I might die on my tour, I might as well enjoy life while I can, and I did. Okay, day 3 in the Trang. This is the day I'll be departing or the day I have to outfit myself. So the party's over. I must get outfitted for the trip to an unknown assignment, departing on a C-123 for my flight up country somewhere in the 2 Corps operation area of South Vietnam to a city called Quy Nhon. Before I could leave for that journey, I had to be outfitted with combat-related gear in the form of combat uniforms, jungle fatigue, jungle boots, weapons, rifle, pistol, load-bearing gear, backpack, and so forth. Now I got to carry all this stuff plus a duffel bag full of shit and go to war. No backpack yet. I must have looked like an idiot. I don't know how, but I was the first ROMAD to receive the new, at the time, camouflage jungle fatigues. So now I'm dressed like Rambo, but I look like a effing new guy. You imagine what I must have looked like, right?
Right.
Flight 2 and arrival on the 27th of December, 1967 to Quy Nhon Air Base, Binh Dinh Province, 2 Corps, Republic of South Vietnam. Now, this city is probably about 120 miles north in the Trang. Again, by yourself, the Air Force likes to do that. This was a large base, so confused as hell, I would ask like an idiot anyone if they knew where the Rock Tiger headquarters was. Primarily an Army base, no one has a clue. Not sure what time I arrived at Quy Nhon, but after several hours, I asked a pilot in a flight suit in the terminal if he knew where this place was or someone who did. Turns out he's one of the facts assigned to the Rocks, and he's on his way there, except he's going by ground transport. in a Jeep, the one M151. The Jeep's coming to pick them up, and if they have room, I can get there with them. I found space in the Jeep, and off I went. Most TACP assignments were to the division level first and based solely on your attitude and social skills. You either stayed at division headquarters or you were sent off to one of two infantry brigades or the cavalry regiment. According to the division ALO, I was not going to fit in there. And my best fit was assignment to the Cav regiment. After 2 days of hate between the ALO and myself, I was off to the Rock Tiger Division Cavalry Regiment. At the time, I imagined was the worst TCP assignment you could get. I imagined wrong. The Cav had the reputation of being deployed in the field with little breaks to be back in garrison for any meaningful rest periods. Food, you would eat only Korean food and like it. Little did that ALO know that at the Cav TACP, the Koreans went out of their way to take care of the American advisors, and that included TACP's facts and their enlisted advisors. Because of our lightning response to the ROC's need for immediate CAS missions, we were treated like high-ranking officers. I know of no other enlisteds treated this way anywhere else in Vietnam. They really did treat us well. The Cav Regiment headquarters and fort was called Camp Thunderbolt. It was located about 20 miles west of the port city of Quy Nhon. It had a 1,200-foot long runway with windsock, and the Romads were ATC for this runway when needed. The Cav was a line unit located far from U.S. military facilities in 2 Corps. It was a protective force tasked with military security in Binh Dinh province, including protecting Phu Cat Air Base and the port city of Quy Nhon. Among the ROC TACPs, it was referred to simply as the Cav. This unit was battle tested, heavily decorated for their fighting accomplishments in South Vietnam, and especially in the 2 Corps. Their reputation traveled far ahead of them in theater, and they were known as true warfighters, to be feared and respected among the different service branches all over South Vietnam. The NVA were instructed to stay clear of contact with this force at all costs. Their kill ratios versus their own losses was among the highest of any of the combat units in Vietnam, be it American or otherwise. How untrained Romads survived in combat, I don't know. We just did. CAS procedures and air support for the Cav was taught by the facts on the fly. Survival and all other necessary skills to live in the field and in garrison was learned on the fly also. For instance, you had a tent, you learned how to set it up without directions. You had a cot, you learned how to put it up and so forth. The number one thing was learning where the food was and water. We lived on sea rats, and you had to make sure that you had plenty on hand at all times. Romads were also responsible for the care and feeding of the FACs and ALOs. The FAC and ALO would not have survived without their Romad. The TACP was a 2-man team, and in the Air Force, you were not separated from your officer counterpart on deployments regardless of rank. Yeah, water in Vietnam was a real problem because most of it was, it really had a lot of disease in the water. You had to carry all kinds of pills to treat whatever you got. The Koreans, they would have a water buffalo somewhere nearby or something like that. You had your canteens, but they wouldn't last very long. So anyhow, it was kind of a real problem.
Yeah.
At the Cav, we had our own little Air Force thing going on. Command and Control Authority belonged to the 504th Tactical Air Support Group and its Direct Air Support Center, known as DASC Alpha. All other air operations belonged to us, and we were conducted without interruption by any higher authority, including division on up. We made a life by and for ourselves independent of anyone else. No Air Force unit ever intervened or ever checked on us. It was like we didn't exist for a year. I guess we did it right. Nobody has kind of imagine the authority in the things we did in Vietnam. I could write a book about it, but anyhow, it was so unique. Uh, our unit, the CAV, was formally designated not as a U.S. Air Force TACP, but a part of the U.S. Special Operations Group, also part of the Army SOG units. We were simply designated Advisory Team 47, SPO, San Francisco, California. The assignment was officially a 1-year-long TDY for pay purposes. Go figure. I don't know how that happened. I have to say, knowing absolute authority granted to us to launch and control tactical strike aircraft that stood alert ready for our call cannot be measured. Everything could stand strip alert at Phuket Air Base, and if we didn't call them, they'd just sit there all day and then shut off and go home. I cannot describe the feeling of so much power, knowing that lives, many lives, would be saved by the Romads at the CAV Regiment. By successful planning, deployment, safe execution of CAS missions, the halo and facts would not allow our control of CAS missions to get out of hand. We had strict rules to follow there. Can you even imagine at that time that an E4 ground radio maintenance technician with no formal CAS training, no advanced infantry training, no survival skills would be allowed to do this job? Me either.
Crazy.
It was done by so many unnamed, unrecognized individuals, and that's a shame because everyone knows the fact story in Vietnam, but no one hardly knows the Romad TACP story, except in a very small circle of friends. I've never told this story in detail to anyone, so this is the first. Other than, I was in Vietnam as a Romad. The CAV TACP was not located on or near any Air Force base. It was located about 10 kilometers southwest of Phuket Air Base on Highway 19 deep in a valley. Its primary responsibility was to deny enemy troop movement from the An Pass through a large coastal plain stretching all the way to the South China Sea, a distance of about 40 miles east to west. Further, was a primary protective force for the military installations and port facilities in and around the city of Quy Nhon. This area of responsibility was mostly in Binh Dinh province, an area of about 900 square miles. I arrived to my main TACP on the 30th of December, 1967. On the 31st of December, I was deployed to meet up with my halo, who was already deployed to Rock Cav observation post along with the regiment CC and TOC, some 10 miles distance. I didn't have a road map or anything. I don't know where I was headed. The route of travel alone but armed, was by means of the radio Jeep combo known as the Mark 108, with a generator mounted in a trailer. When I finally found where the TOC was located, I met my first halo, a lieutenant colonel. I'd never been in a 151 Jeep before and knew nothing of the Jeep or the Mark 108. The halo taught me how to operate all the radios and the generator, and he was not happy about having to do that. So I didn't know any of this stuff. However, he was a short timer. He didn't really care about that. Traveling by Jeep to your battle station by yourself on an unknown highway, what could go wrong with that?
Right.
A lot. But
Yeah, right.
fortunately, lots of visible landmarks to follow as given to me by someone. I can't remember who. That deployment lasted only a few days, but it was enough to learn the mark and all the radios, including the portable radios, while I was in the field. About this time, 2 more untrained Romads showed up at the Cav Regiment ready for TACP duty, and then the radio operator Romad swap out was complete and Project Pack Rat was over. 3 of us spent the month of January learning some basic survival skills. We learned them among ourselves. No manual for this stuff. How to properly work the MARC radios, how to call Direct Air Support Center for CAS requests for air support, phonetic alphabet, map and compass, orientation flight over our area responsibility, and so forth. We really got to know the S3 regiment staff and became best friends with the regiment sergeant major. He was actually my best friend. We lived on sea rations and beer for the most of our tour, or on the local economy. The Koreans did not like ham and eggs, so when in garrison, we could get from their mess hall all that we could eat of that. We could get fresh chicken from the vendors in a local hamlet, deep fry or barbecue the hell out of the chicken, kill all the bugs and stuff. The top made damn sure we were taken care of, especially in the field. Hey, during January 1968, everything in country remained relatively calm. Little fighting. You could even go to town in civilian clothes and shop around. However, that was about ready to come to a dead stop. Damn good thing, though, as the 3 of us Romans spent January figuring out what our job really was, and that saved our ass. The radio operators had left the living quarters and equipment in a really decayed state. They didn't maintain any TACP radio equipment, and it was in really bad shape. No spare batteries, broken mics, a mess. All of the field gear had been tossed in a small Connex, probably in 65 or 66. It's all mildew, hadn't been touched. All of that was repaired or replaced as best we could. We made a radio room with one of the MARC pallets, and the broken radios were swapped out with good ones from Division or the 21st Task. PRC 25s, those are the standard FM radios used on the ground. Everyone had those. We could get help from the Koreans to fix those. Except for the disgusting conditions of our hooch, inside and out, we were pretty much ready for action by the end of January. I think the radio operator AFSC guys are ready to get the hell out of the country or something, because this place was disgusting.
Oh, man.
Deployment to the field was by rotation, i.e. your turn to go. Most of the TACP deployments were by road to pre-established OPs on one of 3 high hills in our AO. From those, you could visually see the whole coastal plain area in Phuket Air Base. You may get deployed occasionally south of the Cav, deep into the Central Highlands, by Huey or Chinook. No Jeeps here. If by Chinook that meant the Jeep and trailer were going too, then you'd be outside the wire for a long period of time, maybe a month or more. I spent probably 8 months in the field, 8 to 10 months, outside the wire.
Dang.
Yeah, it was something else. Sometimes I would deploy with Huey, or by Huey, with just the portable radios, sidearm, M16, food and batteries, and a poncho. The FAC would meet me at the TOC. We slept wherever on whatever was available, mostly on the ground, on top of a couple of ammo crates laid end to end. FACs in the field that chose not to assist a ROMAD with setup of a TACP would soon find out that the ROMAD was his only link to providing creature comfort out there. So go ahead, treat your ROMAD badly, and find out. Okay, this is the Tet Offensive. January 30th and 31st, 1968. The night of January 30th, 1968 was nothing I would have ever expected. All hell breaks loose in South Vietnam, and every major hamlet and city center were attacked by North Vietnamese Army Regular, the NVA, numbering some 83,000 troops, plus their supporting VC sympathizers, numbering again in the thousands also. So you knew you were in combat at that point. Our TAC with 3 ROMADs were sent out at daylight on the morning of January 31st by helicopter air assault. Again, I know air assault training. We're sent into a hot LZ with the objective to destroy the MVA and BC force that had attacked the city of Quignon and captured the Korean radio station there. The entire ROC Capital Tiger Division was deployed on this mission in joint air assault using over 100 Hueys, along with U.S. Army mech assistance in the form of tanks and M113 armored personnel carriers. Tactical air support given in the form of fighters, AC-47 gunships, and flare ships from all over air bases in 2 Corps. My own deployment lasted about 45 days with very little break from actual enemy contact. During this time, the ROCs captured or killed over 1,000 NVA regulars, several hundred VC, mostly by direct contact or CAS missions, controlled by our TACPs. The ROMADs at this time learned how to do the CAS missions to a level that had a fact been killed or wounded, the ROMAD could take over. However, full control of CAS missions, TAC Pro ROMADs was not granted to the enlisted ROMADs at the CAV during this phase of the Tet offensive. Combat missions after Tet. The Cav Regiment and its TACPs were pretty much worn out by the end of the Tet offensive and were relieved by other ROC division units to hold the fort for the ROMADs. ROMADs, we look like death. We're a raggedy bunch at this time. Living on sea rations, you probably lost about 30 pounds within a couple of months of your arrival. That's why so many Vietnam veteran photos of the soldiers, they look so thin.
Yeah.
Because that's all we lived on. We didn't eat meals or nothing like that.
Man.
So anyhow, we looked pretty bad. We're a raggedy bunch, dirty, unshaven. We were able to clean up in garrison, though, and then it was party time. Alive and well, everyone was happy about that. No wounded, no battle scars yet. New uniform of the day becomes the U.S.-issued Tiger fatigues. You normally see the Green Berets or Special Forces of other services wearing that type of fatigue, not the regular jungle camouflage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that became the uniform of the day. All our TACP personnel and their facts wore that uniform. This was courtesy of one of the ROMAD's brothers, who was a Special Forces long-range reconnaissance patrol operator. And he could get us damn near anything we asked for. We carried live hand grenades and all that. That was given to us by the Koreans, smoke grenades, all that kind of stuff. Combat missions after Tet were mild by comparison. U.S. intelligence and Korean intelligence reported an NVA brigade had gone missing and unaccounted for. It was supposed to have been eliminated in the battle for Quignon. Also missing was a very large force of their BC counterparts. Somehow they escaped without a trace. The hunt was on. For the next several months, contact with enemy was by direct engagement or by request for immediate airstrikes, and usually only a small number of killed by air confirmations occurred. CAS at this time was just like Tet, mainly controlled by the airborne fact or ground facts. TAC ROMADs would request airstrikes, provide contact points, IPs, situation reports, safe bailout points, and artillery advisories. Beginning on the 1st of July, a second Tet counteroffensive was launched to find, kill, or capture the missing NVA brigade and the VC that attacked Quignon during Tet. Intelligence sources tell ROC Cap Division that an MVA brigade force of approximately 1,000 man strength is forming up in their AO, possibly and most likely in the Phuket Mountains, an AO of the rocks. Rocks have them surrounded. They cannot escape north. They cannot escape south or southwest. The U.S. Army has them blocked. Further, it's believed this MVA unit, because it has no means of escape, will likely try an all-out assault on Phuket Air Base, just to the south of the Phuket Mountains. The Cav Regiment TACP and all its troopers are already deployed, myself included, to an established operating post and tactical operations center about 4 miles east of Phuket Air Base on a very high hill, somewhere between 600 and 800 feet high. Yes, Trey, he ain't telling me nothing. Meanwhile, this NVA force is slowly, maybe unknowingly, being corralled in an ever-tightening noose by the Rock Regiment, until finally around midnight on July 10th, 1968, the noose is closed. Me, I'm asleep, of course. All of a sudden, every single artillery piece the Rocks had and U.S. Army have within range of this encounter opens fire. The whole night sky is lit up. The noise is deafening. The ground is shaking like I never felt anything like shaking like that. After about a half an hour or so, there was a short break in the Allied attack, and the Rocks want air power now. No fighters or facts for this one. I'm about to be on duty for 72 hours straight. And by the way, listen to this. On this day, early in the morning, nothing going on, my fac decides to leave and go back to Quin Yon, leaving guess who to take effing charge.
Jeez.
I can't explain that feeling in a million years. Our situation was really bad. I thought we were about to be run over. Then I called the DAS for a request for immediate airstrikes. The only thing available was the AC-47 gunships from Phuket. I believe these are the spooky gunships, by the way. And flare ships from the same base. They arrived on scene, ready to fight in about 10 minutes. Flares lit up the area like daylight. The Army provided more light from their tanks that had searchlights. You could see the MVA troops running around in a very large clearing. The Koreans lit up the area with Willie Pete mortars. The gunships, I gave them the cleared hot, and a 72-hour battle ensued. In the daytime, immediate requests for air support came in waves. 100s, F-4s, B-57s, choppers, you name it. That lasted all day for 3 days straight. At night, the spookies showed up from Phuket without even being asked. As soon as it was dark, they were there. No movie could replicate this scene. Later, on day 3, it was over. 640 NVA were killed by air, and the hundreds of VC were toast. Okay. I could be making this story up, so nobody would probably believe it. I put anything in here. Who's going to be able to check this out? So, for the record, I'm going to read from an official Air Force document what transpired the first night of that battle. And just to leave no doubt in anyone's mind that ROMAD did indeed control CAS in Vietnam. The basis for the JTAC today, the first ROMAD job description. Sergeant Humphrey, duties explained. AFSC 30454, radio operator for the U.S. Air Force TACP. This is from my official Airman's report, by the way. Radio operator for the U.S. Air Force TACP, Cav Regiment, Rock Capital Division, monitors, records, and relays all information that concerns and affects air power in support of the ground forces. Handles immediate airstrike requests, coordinates artillery, advisories, conducts flight following for all forward air controllers assigned to the Rock Cap Division on combat missions. Controls flare ships and spooky gunships. Facts and specific achievements. Sergeant Humphrey regularly demonstrates outstanding leadership initiative. He must use judgment, ingenuity, tenacity, coping with ever-changing situations for which there is no formal training or stereotyped approach. Quality of his performance is crucial to the effectiveness of the tactical air control system. In 7 combat operations, Sergeant Humphrey proved his resourcefulness and dedication to duty by receiving numerous favorable comments from his ground commanders. Through reliable understanding coordination between Korean ground and American forces. During combat operations, Sergeant Humphrey frequently coordinates, directs, and controls tactical airstrikes, AC-47 gunships, artillery, and the evacuation of combat casualties. His superior leadership and efficiency was typified on 10 July 68. While subject to hostile fire and adverse conditions, he provided vital suppression of hostile forces by calling in AC-47 gunships, pinpointing the target in friendly positions, and directing the AC-47 use of flares and strafing fire. As a result of his timely execution and excellent knowledge of the tactical air control system, there are very few friendly casualties. That's for the record.
Nice.
That's an official document. Those people don't even know exist. I know of none exist. That's it. The rest of my now also though you could put any ROMAD's name on this document from RTACP and it would apply for them. So I'm not taking full credit for I was the only one that did this stuff.
Sure.
But a lot of others did that never going to be recognized. The rest of my combat tour in Vietnam pales in comparison to this event and consists of still a few major minor engagements from the night of July 10th, 1968. Nighttime cast became a specialty of mine. That was really cool. And then just like that, it was over. That was it. I returned to the 21st task in the Trang on the 15th of December, 1968. And I had a flight departure date back to the world for the 17th of December. Merry Christmas to all. I turned in my gear, proceeded to the club where about a dozen or so ROMADs from 2 Corps Army units were gathered for their going away party. This was not some kind of quiet gathering.
Yeah, I reckon.
This was not. This was a combat end of tour celebration like nothing I've ever been part of since.
Yeah.
And the club burned to the ground that night.
What?
Okay, ROMAD celebrating the fact that they made it out alive and we're going back to the world for Christmas. What could go wrong here? You would have to have seen it to believe it. This group of ROMADs forever became part of the Vietnam Veteran Brotherhood. And in my whole entire career in the Air Force, I ran into one Vietnam ROMAD, and that was a guy named August Smerritt, Shaw Air Force Base. I mean, I went around.
Just get out, or
I don't know. I went around the world twice, all kinds of assignments. Nobody admitted to being a Vietnam ROMAD for some reason.
Wow.
Very strange. This group of ROMADs forever became part of the Vietnam Brotherhood, and I wonder where they are today. Sometime on the 16th of December, I wake up on my duffel bag down by the TAS, not necessarily in good shape. I only had a short time. I had to catch a Freedom Bird to the world, man, but I had to get to Cam Ranh Bay first. Only problem is I'm in the Trang and the plane is at Cam Ranh Bay. Being a really quick-thinking ROMAD at this time, I asked one of the FACs if he could fly me to Cam Ranh Bay in his O2. Turns out the FAC was the squadron commander. No problem. On the 17th of December, the Freedom Bird of the world arrives, deboards, fresh meat, and all hell breaks loose, just like when I arrived there. Arrival to the world, McCord Air Base, Washington. No welcome home party for us, none. The returning Vietnam Veteran soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen were not welcome back in the USA. And that's the end of my Vietnam tour. Beginning in 1969, during these years, the USA was not a friendly place for Vietnam veterans. Peace protests and all that. To avoid the hassle and forget about Vietnam, I moved to Australia to decompress. While there, I met and married an Aussie, my wife Robin. I'm still married to the same Aussie to this day.
Nice.
Been married like 60 years or so.
That's awesome.
I stayed there for a couple of years, then moved back to the States where I knew I could make a better living from a financial standpoint. I moved to New York State and worked in a job in highway construction as a grade foreman for a year. During the winter layoff period of 71, I decided to re-enlist in the U.S. Air Force, as by then, 16 years didn't seem like such a long time to serve out the remainder of a 20-year career. I was immediately assigned to the 2019th Comm Squadron, Griffiths Air Force Base, Rome, New York. About a month into the assignment, I was promoted to Staff Sergeant and received orders back to Vietnam. And you guessed it, ground radio maintenance. Always in demand. The war ended before I was to report for duty. Orders canceled. Yippee. The Comm Squadron assignment sent me right straight to maintenance control, where during your shift, you monitor the status of comm radios, nav aid equipment for the operational status, good or bad. If bad, you dispatch the appropriate maintenance technicians to fix the problem. This was a SAC base, no joke. This was the most boring job I ever had at the time. I had no idea that this job would be the beginning of a long list of administrative and management positions that would define my Air Force career for the next 16 years. After the Comm Squadron assignment, I received orders to Germany as an installation team chief in charge of communication installation programs that would replace tube-type air traffic control radios from World War II era with the more modern state-of-the-art transistorized equipment. The program was called Project Rivet Switch, and I was stationed at Wiesbaden Air Base, Germany. The whole assignment was spent TDY all over Europe, the Middle East, and after about a year, 1975 to be exact, I received a humanitarian reassignment to the Tactical Air Command at Shaw Air Force Base. This new assignment would be a new beginning of a completely different career path. While I was at Wiesbaden Air Base, I would see the OV-10s that were stationed there at the time, and occasionally I'd see a little Jeep running around with a bunch of antennas on it. It didn't look like a Mark 108, but I never could track down where it was from. But actually, it was one of the operating locations of the German TACP stuff.
Wow.
What a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
So, 1975, Shaw Air Force Base, 507 Tactical Air Control Group, 507 Tactical Air Command and Control Squadron, Tactical Air Control Center. The 507 TACS was divided into two organizational units, an Air Control Operations Unit, a Combination Maintenance and Logistics Unit. The Operation Unit was tasked to plan, direct, and control air operations in a specific area of tactical air operations, manage joint operations with the component forces of other services. Tactical air control included air support, air defense, airspace control, and management. The Maintenance Logistics Unit, maintenance control, and job control, where I was gainfully employed. My job was reporting to and responsible to the Chief of Maintenance for maintaining equipment outage reports, follow up all maintenance in progress actions, i.e. supply parts, availability, delays, maintenance personnel, availability, and a host of other items required to maintain the highest level of mission-ready status for the wing and squadron CC. When I arrived at a 507 TACCS, job control, maintenance control, it was top-heavy with senior NCOs. There were 5 enlisted personnel assigned, 1 senior master sergeant. That senior master sergeant was Chief Champy, the first chief master sergeant of the 275 career field, by the way.
Oh, okay.
He's famous throughout the thing with the old timers, especially.
Sure.
1 master sergeant, 2 tech sergeant, and myself. No females assigned. When I left that position early in '78, there were 4 enlisted personnel. Myself, I was the NC of both job control and maintenance control, and 3 304X4 females specialists. I'm not sure how I wound up with 3 female troops supervised, but I can tell you it was a challenge.
I was going to say that's pretty interesting.
I don't know. They were all 3 levels. I had to train them to be 5 levels. So none of them worked in frickin' maintenance.
Jeez.
In summary, during this time, 1975, early 78, I had very little interaction with operators inside the house, and I knew almost nothing of what that function was. The command and control element for deployable U.S. Air Force tactical Air Force resources. 1977 was another new beginning. I had more new beginnings than anyone I ever knew. Okay, so early in '77, maybe January or February, I went to a personnel section to check my records for errors and possibly put in a dream sheet for a new assignment. I was already at Shaw 3 years, and I just thought it might be time to move on. Anyhow, what I found out during that check was that I had a secondary AFSC identifier already assigned 275XO. This is before it was even official in April of that year. Personnel couldn't explain. Come back in a couple of months, and we'll see what that's given a name or not. So I come back. I found out that I was completely dropped from available for reassignment status. Personnel changed that in an effing hurry. And if I had not checked into my personnel records, the 275XO thing might not have happened at all. So I went back in a couple of months, discovered that I now had a primary AFSC of 275XO, Tactical Air Command and Control Specialist, effective April 30th, 1977. So what? About 6 months had passed. I get to change of duty station with no change in PCS status with an assignment to the 21st task. Same 21st task I served with in Vietnam. Report to the 21st task not later than January 1st, 1978. It actually took me 8 months before I finally reported for duty to the task late. Once I signed into the 21st task, I got my man card back. No one cared if I was late or not, and guess where my new duty section was? Job control. The full conversion of all AFSC 304X4s performing TACP duties consisted of. This is how the career field was established, the 275XO career field. Anyone that had skills in addition to be from a TACP somewhere in the world, if you saw a Jeep, knew what a watch cap was, knew some other skill that pertained to TACP use, you were toast. You were automatically converted in place or assigned in transit to somewhere as a 275XO tax. No ifs, ands, or buts. So no real thought was given, just like Vietnam. They just grabbed people off the street and that was it.
Wow.
So how do you like them apples, Airman? Either enjoy it or get out. You cannot believe the chaos of the conversion. The career field was filled with people who, with no concept of a TACP or ROMAD, people with more than 16 years of service separating immediately and no definitive job description. This career field was filled with opportunists looking for a quick promotion, no idea what being a TACP member was.
Yeah.
And these were going to be our leaders. Who would lead the new school graduates? For sure, it was not going to be the retired on active duty leaders. They were not going to lead anything. Physically fit. And the people that got caught up in this conversion, you wouldn't believe it. So I'm glad I wasn't a newbie regarding ROMAD stuff. However, I could use a refresher course. Been a long time since I did that job. I couldn't even remember how to start the Jeep or operate the radios. In the fall of '78, I went to Hurlburt Field for some cast training and field exercises. Except for the day-night nav section of training, I had a lot of fun doing that. The training here at AGOS was a complete waste of time. The emphasis was on the fact, not the new tax. Not surprising at this time. Completing training, I returned to the 21st task, and that's when I realized that the AFSC 275XO was an operations AFSC. However, I was still working in job control doing a radio maintenance duty. That's not going to last very long. During the initial conversion, and for about a year and a half, TACPs and the Mark 108 system were controlled by the radio maintenance shop, referred to as the LG section. ROMADs were required to perform maintenance duties that a normal 304X4 were also tasked to do. However, that responsibility came to a halt one day when I personally informed the chief of maintenance that the 275XOs were operations specialists and no longer authorized nor required to do the radio maintenance stuff or report to him. The LG chief of maintenance went nuts. No insubordinate ROMAD is going to tell him, a captain, what we're no longer going to do. The LG went to the CC and the ROMAD OIC to straighten this out. After I explained to the CC what the 275XO's real duty and responsibility was, the CC and OIC tossed his ass out of the ROMAD shop and his job controller, not me. From that point on, no radio maintenance were allowed in the ROMAD shop without some kind of permission by our OIC. I never saw or heard from him again. The ROMADs got on with the business of becoming a functioning component of the tactical air support team. As an operator, ROMAD TACP began training for that purpose. A lot of the NCOs and newly minted 275XOs were ready for this new direction. ROMAD 275XOs were already playing in the mud, deploying to the swamps south of Myrtle Beach to work with the new A-10 aircraft on simulated cast missions with a FAC in tow. We practiced CR2 using our pilots for training. We did helo extractions like they were shot down in combat. Sometime in mid-'79, Kim Allen made the push to establish the ETAC program as well. I did not participate in that effort, as I PCS before it really got started. The ETAC program was the first step in the process, along with realistic field training that bumped up the 275XO's morale and future path that the AFC would follow. Real credit for this effort has to go to Kim Allen, Jim Steele, Robert Scott, and supporting officers and other NCOs as well. Everybody was really enthusiastic about getting this program going.
Nice.
In June '79, I ended my assignment at the 21st task and have to say it ended too soon. I never got to see the advancements made for the 275XO career field that was started there. It was a good time to be a Romad, though. Bad hangs, repelling off, you name it. We kind of stood out really well in the 21st task on Shaw Air Force Base.
I bet.
My new assignment to another task squadron. The 27th task, to be exact, located at Davis Mountain Air Force Base, Tucson, Arizona. Now, here's something we did. Beginning at the 21st task, my standard duty uniform became the jungle camouflage fatigues, typically worn during the Vietnam War. Although they were not authorized unless in the field or on some form of military exercise. Reasoning that if the facts could wear flight suits all day long, the Romads should be allowed to wear their camos also. No problem at Shaw. Became pretty much the standard duty uniform for the Romads in that task. 27th task arrival, July 1979. This is really interesting, folks. My arrival at the 27th task was everything. Where everything was, you can't do that. It was met with an aggressive push by the powers to outlaw the wear of my distinctive uniform. Simply not authorized. So I had a pretty smooth arrival at the 27th task. Not.
Right.
However, the squadron CC was effective Vietnam with the rocks, and over a couple of beers one day discussing old times, we decided that, hell yeah, we can wear that uniform as a standard duty uniform for Romads. My visit on Fridays with the CC became a ritual, and some people did not like that a bit. At this task, the Romads and pilot officers that I was used to hanging around with, from Vietnam days and everything. But that wasn't the case at this task. There was no interaction between the Romads and their fact. So anyhow, the commander and I had a ritual where Friday afternoons we'd go down to his office and open the door to the outside and we'd drink a 6-pack of beer and just shoot the shit. And of course, that wasn't well received by my superiors. So from day one of my arrival at the 27th task I became real popular with the NCOIC and the Limp Bizkit OIC. I was allowed to keep wearing the camo uniform. I kept it a secret from my team. Meanwhile, I was preparing to outfit my team with camos and jungle boots and the Navy watch cap. Summer of 1979 to 1980, this TACP Romad shop was a total embarrassment to the Air Force. This task was a retirement home for the leadership of the Romad shop. At the time, 2 master sergeants, 2 tech sergeants, and 4 or 5 staff sergeant team chiefs. The 5 TACP teams had about 20 or so Keesler Romad new arrivals. The 4 highest ranking sergeants were a true waste of manpower and completely stalled their progression in 275XO training for war. Future application of their skills except for radio maintenance and operation. This place needed a complete shakeup of leadership, and I was going to do that. But it cost me on down the road. The team of Romads I was given at this time was the 275XO misfits that I guess no one else wanted. That's how it appeared to me. They were not misfits. They were simply tired of wasted years in the Air Force doing nothing more than cleaning Jeeps and playing radio operators and generally getting into unnecessarily trouble with leadership. What a effing mess. I didn't pay attention to the NCIC or his OIC. They were really a major roadblock to performing the task at hand. Making war fighters out of these men, I took charge of this mess of a team on my own and proceeded to enforce some discipline and good order. so lacking at the time. For about a week every day, I watched my charges arrive for duty, usually late, unshaven, regular Air Force fatigues unpressed, boots dirty, unshined, etc. Awful to say the least. I'd never seen such neglect of troops in my life in the military. So on day one of my second week on the job, my team of cast-offs shows up for duty looking like shit as usual. Immediately, I sent them packing back to their barracks. I gave them 1 hour to clean themselves up, shave, clean, press fatigue, shine boots, and all of that. For this team, that was a tall order, but they did their best and were at least 90% presentable when they showed up. Now, the next day they showed up, they were 100% presentable.
Nice.
For muster. I mean, these guys look really sharp. You'd never believe it. The next day they showed up for work 100% presentable for muster. My next stunt was to outfit my team in camouflage fatigues and jungle boots. I had some connections that got this job done. This is only 2 weeks into my tour of duty, by the way, at the 27 tasks. I already made necessary connections to get stuff going.
Nice.
So I had some connections, got this job done without any squadron help. Now I had the only team dressed this way, and all of a sudden these Romads were proud to be in the Air Force. I never had a problem with any of them after that. Warfighter training started immediately after this. We did PT initially and then expanded into operational exercises in the local area. Okay, the NCO Corps went absolutely effing nuts over this incident with the camos and boots. They tried to hang me for unauthorized use of squadron funds to outfit my team in camos and boots. The only problem was I didn't need squadron money, and there was no trace of using their funds for this outfitting. If you want something done, you do it. We were noticed for sure. You got to stand out to others as a beacon of hope. The Kiesel grads and all the other teams wanted this, but at the time could never make it happen. My team was the only team so dressed like that for my tour of duty at the 27 tasks.
Nice.
Old-time Romads, no secrets. Don't ever underestimate their ability to get stuff done. The final straw that set the NCOIC and new Assistant Tech Sergeant Team NCOIC over the edge was the day the Black Beret was authorized for wear. The day it was announced, sometime in October 79, my team and I went to the nearest Army-Navy store. We purchased a Black Beret with our own money. Also, since no flash and crest was authorized at this time, we purchased a little gold A10 lapel pin and wore that as our crest. Imagine what that looked like. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
We were the first Romads to wear the Black Beret west of the Mississippi. When we showed back up at the task that day, my career was officially over. At least I thought it was.
Yeah.
I was promoted to Tech Sergeant at this time also. There was a real personality conflict between me and the team NCOIC. Basically, we hated each other's guts. And his way of being a leader was definitely not the way my leadership capabilities were. And the higher-ups in our Romad shop, they were all bent out of shape as well. So I don't know why. I was just doing my job. I didn't see nothing wrong with what I was doing.
Right.
A few months after my promotion to Tech Sergeant, I started a special training unit at the TAS and was out of the hair of the main Romad leadership. I started this new training shop on my own. Nobody stopped me. A few months after my promotion to Tech Sergeant, I started that special training unit. This was a good move for me, except my old team, my whole entire team, refused to work with a new supervisor. This problem was not resolved when I PCS'd out of the TAS, and I'm sure it became resolved soon after I left. You know, UCMJ stuff and all that.
All right.
You can't, but it's like a revolt. Spring 1980, another new assignment. So going to Germany. No more problem child for this task. A year after I arrived there, I was gone. Bye, assholes. July 1980, report to CC at some obscure OL in Germany. Orders changed en route, and that was the end of my line level assignment as a Romad 275XO. July 1980, another new beginning on the horizon. And that's where I stopped. I haven't made a workup on anything further from that. So in the future, if you want, I can tag that on at the back end of somebody's war story, or
Okay.
maybe do a whole nother section. You'll have to see how that'll take me at least a couple of weeks or so to put that together. If you want, I'll let you know when I have that package back together.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So if you have any special questions, go ahead.
Oh no, I thought this was great. I mean, the part on the Vietnam was something that we always hear about, and we're always
Right.
like, we don't, but we never heard the details. We never heard the actual day-to-day
Right.
life, and
Right.
I thought that was fascinating. That was great.
Yeah. There's a lot there that I didn't even include in there,
Oh, I'm sure.
life in garrison and all that kind of stuff. But I think I gave you enough detail there to make it worthwhile to people who don't know what actually happened there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it was great.
Okay.
It was awesome.
Well, look, I really appreciate you hosting me.
Well, sir, thank you for coming on. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, you're
This is great.
welcome. I'm not pushing it. I'm 81 years old. Oh, wait, I just turned 81 years old. Excuse me.
Oh, congratulations. Happy
Do
birthday.
you know how long ago 60 some years was?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, and it's
Christ.
well, how lucky it was, or how lucky was it that you took all those pictures
Yeah.
to refresh your memory? I mean, because heck, I don't even remember stuff that I did 10 years ago, let alone 60.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I can, yeah.
Well, that's part of a lot of the Vietnam veterans, they got the PTSD thing and all that. And I've been diagnosed with that, but you don't forget something like that.
Right.
It's there all the time. So if you have nothing else to say, thank you very much for hosting me.
Yes,
And,
sir.
you guys have a nice day.